Victor. Sounds like many ways nonprofits can benefit from it. So why haven't more nonprofits and NGOs adopted the technology if it would benefit them so greatly?
This is something that if you're in the industry, you kind of like bang your head against quite often. And it very often is not optimal in a sense for a lot of altruistic, well-minded people who would love to help. I mean, Data for Good is full of these people that would love to help. And even still, we do volunteerism work, and very often it's difficult to get the nonprofit, the NGO, or the charity to even understand that we're going to do free work for them. And that stems from a lot of things. If you really look at it, some of it is protectionism. They want to make sure that you're not going to mess around with the data, you're not going to lose it, get hacked. Everybody's sort of worried about hacks, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some of that, and rightfully, that obviously makes sense. You can put guardrails in place to protect that data. I mean, we've done work, not on Data for Good side, but with my businesses, we've in the past done work with top secret data. So believe me, if the government is willing to bequeath top secret data to me, the data that you have about some donor is almost like not that big of a deal to us. We know how to protect data, kind of thing. So in terms of protection, it's a rightful concern. Really, like another one is a general like malaise or issue with bureaucracy. So if you're at the right size of a nonprofit, there's going to be one or two decision makers who are basically either going to stop everything from happening or enable everything from happening. So you may have a lot of people on the ground floor who wish and hope, cross their fingers and hold their breath that something is going to change and be done. But of course, like if there is that one decision maker who doesn't believe in this and who can't be convinced, then you're kind of stuck. So that does happen quite a bit. And it happens because you don't necessarily get the absolute most involved in AI people leading these nonprofits. It's usually people who are altruistic and want to do good things. As a result of those people being more altruistic and less technical, there you go, in terms of like business technicality, it very often will lead to like a poor choice in tools. If you're changing a tire, you have the option of like 3-4 tools, and maybe you picked up like the smallest wrench possible, and now you have no leverage. It's kind of the same thing. If you don't choose the right tools, or if you are drawn into by the big boy tools when you're not a big boy place, you've kind of like shot yourself in the foot. Maybe you just spent all your budget on something that you can't even manage yourself. That happens all the time. As I mentioned with a little bit about our volunteerism and people who are altruistic want to do good stuff. So with Data for Good, we kind of win because we tell people, we know you do awesome work at work, but sometimes that's not super fulfilling. Maybe it's all kinds of like decision support tools for advertising or some weird industry that you're like, I'm not totally in line with them and I'd like to do something better. So Data for Good gets the ability to get great talent just simply because we provide sort of like the conduit between the nonprofits and the data people. But at a nonprofit, because of the lack of funding, which is another problem, the low pay, which is a big problem in nonprofits, the entire value proposition to somebody who's very good at this is not there. So it's not super sexy to go work at a nonprofit. I guess like the only one, and it's not really a nonprofit that people like to go to, is the UN, or maybe like Greenpeace, because they have a bit of money and a bit of cachet, so you kind of get a little bit of like clout. But unless you're going to be in the nonprofit NGO world for your whole career, it's not often a stepping stone to the next thing. Like you're not going to then go work for a Fortune 500 generally after working at a nonprofit. Actually, because of that, when you do get some good talent, it sort of causes a revolving door. And it also causes a revolving door amongst several of the managers and executives there, because they sort of move between, if they're not the owners or like the real main stakeholders, they will move between nonprofits quite often. And it's like regular industry, you're chasing money or you're chasing dreams. All of this basically leads to a lack of innovative spirit or innovation period, they'll rely on vendors for some of this innovation, but they don't often have it built into their psyche to innovate. It's a lot of the status quo, like we need money. Like 99% of the conversations are how do we get more funding, how do we get more money, how do we keep the funding that we had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not often how do we improve this process or optimize that little thing, where do we find the levers to pull. It's quite literally who's going to give us money so that we can still have the lights on.
Right.
So all of this sounded like a ball of wax that they're doing poorly, but like the reason is that they're not selling you things to the market. So because they're not strictly selling and don't have a sales force that's out there, their sales force is basically only going to try to get funders and donors to get them money. So their revenue comes from chasing that